Hello, this is Liquid Telegon, and today I'm going to be taking you through the heroic Ansurek encounter and giving you the guide. With that being said, let's hop right into it. Of course, this is presented by Team Liquid and Coinbase. The first thing that we're going to want to have set up for this encounter are a couple assignment weakauras. So generally in the previous heroic guides, I have recommended Relo's Northern Sky Nerub-ar Palace pack. There are 3 separate weakauras that you need to have to make sure this pack works properly. And then if you care about certain textures and sounds, this add-on as well contains those. So in order to have the total functionality for this weakaura pack, you will need to go to this URL, wago.io, ns Nerub-ar Palace, and then this is the assignment version of this weakaura. There is a similarly named weakaura that is general, like raid weakauras, which are not assignment based but mechanics based, so like showing that you have a dot or when a certain mechanic is coming up and stuff like that. Again, this aura here is for assignments only, and as you can see in the description, a few things are required to make sure that it works properly. So having this anchor pack will make configuring things more easy. This macro is important, not on this encounter, but in general. Make sure that you have everything that it says here, basically, that is required. And now going down to the Ansurek part of this description, we're going to look at the auras that we have. So in phase 1, we have an aura that helps people position their reactive toxins, and we'll visit this mechanic in a bit, but essentially 2 players are targeted with reactive toxins and they need to be placed like with a certain priority. Basically on heroic, this isn't so important. This is only 2 and not like scaling up like mythic, so you can probably use the default order for this because it prioritizes people according to their mobility as a default. And then the more important one for this difficulty is going to be this Venom Nova assignment. So you need to assign groups of people to soak either reactive toxin when she casts Venom Nova. And then with this note as well, you are assigning which player is going to trigger the reactive toxin. So the way reactive toxin works, as we'll see once I play the video, is that you're dropping like this little bomb on the ground with just a green circle, and in the middle there's an orb essentially, and by walking into the orb you'll knock all players in that green circle up over this Venom Nova ring. So in this note we are assigning the groups, so we can see this first line is a group, and then the first name in this line is going to be the player assigned to trigger it. So on heroic you should have 2 lines, and then the first 3 players of each line are going to be the first break for each group. And then finally, in phase 3, we have this Acolyte Essence assign, which we will visit later. But essentially, when you kill an ad in phase 3, it drops an essence that you pick up by walking into it, and then you can take it through the portal when the ring closes in on you. You can set up this assignment, but players to be told to do that, and for backups to be assigned automatically as well. And we'll circle back to this once we get to phase 3 in the encounter itself. With that being said, let's move on into the actual encounter. So the first thing that you're going to want to notice is that on pull, we want to drag her directly into this corner here. And the reason for that is the first mechanic she's going to do is liquefy. And what that does is it places a puddle under her and deals some raid damage, and then targets players with swirlies that also spawn puddles on the ground. So essentially we just want to minimize the amount of space this takes up, and you can see we have this bait swirlies weakaura up here in the middle of the screen, and liquefy swirlies, and we've created some area denial over here, and then we simply just drag the boss clockwise around the room. Now immediately after this we're going to get our first pair of reactive toxins. So 2 players are going to be chosen for reactive toxin. After several seconds they will drop their green circles on the ground, and essentially you just want them in a kind of left-right configuration or melee range configuration, and we'll talk about this mechanic in a bit once we see it. So the other mechanic happens frequently throughout phase 1 and then with some overlaps, right? So this is like quote unquote like a difficult overlap because web blades are going down, and this is web blades, this gray stuff you see on the ground. You can see they spawn in like this fan / blossom pattern, and what they do is they target 1 player at a time for I believe 4 web blades. So generally a convention that is good here is, so once this boss is moved from liquefied puddle here, melee should move to the opposite side of the boss, right around here, and then range should try and prioritize being closer to the center of the room. And what this does is it creates a convention where these players are being targeted with web blades, and by spreading out the two groups of melee and ranged and keeping them away from where you want to drop these reactive toxins, which should generally be in this area, depending on your exact strategy. Just having these web blades like spawn in either of these two places away from where you want these reactive toxins to be dropped just generally makes the mechanic easier. The more the raid is stacked, the harder the web blades are going to be, because they're all going to be, and you can see this in this image here, like how much more difficult it is to find a safe spot when the web blades are closely clumped like this. So we can see the players place their reactive toxin here, and they managed to get it well placed, like right on the boss, and left and right. So this is where you have the choice of between two strategies. So you can fully assign two groups, so like a left and a right soak group, right? And they need to be even. So if you have 30 players, you have 15 people in this one and 15 people in this one, right? Every time. It's very important that the amount of players in each soak is even. Otherwise, you'll get higher and higher stacks of, I believe it's called reactive froth. And what that is just a debuff, which the higher stacks you have, it deals damage at the end of it. We'll be able to watch this in a second. So you can either fully split your raid into two groups here, right? For like 15-15, for example, 10-10, 5-5, etc. Or you can place these soaks in such a way that you create a Venn diagram with space in the middle here. And if you have your whole raid stack in this Venn, the double overlap here, then you ignore the requirements to have like uneven amount of people in both soaks, right? So because it counts as everyone being in both, essentially. So the issue with this one is that the poppers need to be aware that it's much better to go into the middle of the froth, which is this is the trigger area right here. So they need to know that it's better to go in from the outside, right? Or anywhere out here, any space that isn't overlapping. So in this alternate strategy where you're kind of making it so that people don't have to follow the left-right assignments exactly, all they have to do is get to the middle of the Venn diagram. And then the real bottleneck with this strategy is making sure that the soaks, the reactive toxins themselves are placed close enough to create this overlapping space in the middle for the raid to stand in. And then the poppers are always coming in from this outside, because if they aren't perfectly synced and you're trying to go pop this one from inside the Venn, then it's very possible that this player could hit this slightly early as you're running to pop this one, and then you're going to get knocked up and be unable to pop this, and then you'll wipe. So that's something to be aware of if you're trying to do this Venn diagram strategy for sure. I think it's generally easier than this other convention. However, it does come at the caveat of if you mistime the pops together, which should be at about 0.5 seconds remaining on this Venom Nova cast here. If you mistime it by, I think, a second, you'll get the stacks from failing and definitely wipe. And then also, obviously, if you don't get this Venn overlapping area between the two reactive toxins, also you will probably fail the mechanic because you won't have the assignments set up. Let's continue to see how reactive toxins works exactly. So you can see raid is splitting exactly in half into each of these. And then you trigger it by walking into the center, and then you get knocked up over this Venom Nova ring. If you get hit by Venom Nova, you probably die. And then the second thing to think about is when these reactive toxins leave behind these liquefy area, like acid puddles, right? And then they shoot out these waves in kind of a certain pattern, right? Like it's the waves are coming out like in a kind of fan kind of way. And the most dangerous thing here is that the waves are coming through the boss here, right? So the boss's model is going to be like obscuring these waves coming through, and that's something that you definitely want to be aware of and can easily kill people. Yeah, and then we saw here, this is handled this mechanic perfectly. We have only 2 stacks of reactive froth, and the raid is going to take, as a result, not very much damage. When it expires, which is right now, boom, a little hit to raid damage. Or to the raid HP, rather. And then we have another liquefy, and we're moving. As far as the tank mechanics go, the 2 tank mechanics in this phase are Feast and Liquefy. The same tank will always take Liquefy, and the same tank will always take Feast. and one occurs right after the other. So basically the tank who takes Liquefy will gain a vulnerability. Once their vulnerability falls off, they'll take the boss back and then take the next Liquefy. And the tank with Feast will just hold it until that Liquefy debuff falls off. Next mechanic we have to talk about in this phase is called Silken Tomb, which is this cast here. You see everyone targeted, and what they're just going to be is similar to Tindral, where they're all going to be rooted, and then this ad is going to pop up. Something to mention here is just how far you can get under the boss model. If the boss was moved perhaps to here, this would be a lot better for the time to die of these ads, right? What you want to maximize is the amount of these ads that are completely under the boss's model, right? Which is like signified by this ring around her, right? You can get completely under her and it's no problem at all. Here, that's being prevented by this Liquefy puddle here. And even if it's like this, if as a tank, what you should do is pull the boss forward and try and break your root immediately, such that you can cleave down these roots as fast as possible. If you are able to break your root, then you definitely should. It doesn't have any sort of punishment mechanic for doing so, outside of dropping a web puddle beneath you. Important as a mage, if you are blinking to break your root or doing any kind of movement to break your root like that. Let's just say this mage blinks this way, right, and breaks this root. The puddle will actually spawn at the end of your blink and not where you blinked from. And that's something to note because you obviously don't want to be spawning web puddles in where the group's go, like moving next, right? And we can see here, there's so much space under the boss. Definitely worth using all that space, like getting really under it and stacking up all these ads for cleave. Generally, this is also a very good place to assign any time spirals if you have them available, because a lot of specs use whatever ability time spiral gives you to break roots. And then you can see we're breaking these Silken Tombs into web blades. And then we're going to be getting new reactive toxin targets. Just because this is a really good POV of it, I want to talk briefly about the web blades mechanic because I think it's deceptively difficult. So you have this memory game of the web blades going down. Like, let's say this is 1, this is 2, right, 3, and they go off in the same order that they go down, right? So this one is going to activate first, and their animation that plays is like deceptive because the lines, like the blaze line style graphic here, completely goes away when the web blade is activating, right? And these, they're like, it's drawing itself back in, right? So areas can look safe that are not safe. And it's very easy to see an open space that looks like visually open on the ground, but it's actually a web blade activating, walk into it, and then get hit. With extra awareness, you can hopefully avoid. And then generally as well, the more you are able to maintain a separation between ranged and melee, the less stacked these web blades are going to be. So for instance, if ranged was more positioned out here, and then melee had gone immediately to this side of the boss, then this area that you want to place reactive toxin in would be much cleaner of web blades than currently is. And then these two, it's unlikely that one of these groups is going to get all of the web blades, right? So dealing with like 2 web blades or 1 or 3 is going to be much easier than dealing with all of them kind of like stacked in a short area or a small area. We're getting our new reactive toxins, maintaining that placement left to right. And you can see kind of how easy it is and kind of natural to place them in the Venn diagram here. Just really quite easy. And then if you're going to do that strategy where you all stack in the middle, you could all just stack here, right? And then you have your poppers come in from any of these angles, right? Something that's important to mention is the people who pop these reactive toxins actually get a large green circle around them, and they will need to move out of the raid. And you can see that here. It's actually on this player. So you can see big green circle, and they just move away from the raid and dodge these waves. We go into another Liquefy, and then we're going into another root set. You can see this a bit better here. We're really getting a lot of these under the boss. With just a little bit more boss movement, we could have gotten even more of them in, and they probably would have died. These ones in the back would have probably died a little bit faster. Right, so here we kind of get roots into web blades into roots, like this back-to-back root set. This is a very good place to put Time Spiral. I would very much recommend that you put one here. If you have to choose any other place, I would put one exactly here, and then one in right before the rest in the second intermission. So this combo is a bit difficult because you're breaking out of these routes, and then immediately your reactive toxin targets are chosen, right? And then you're getting web blades into Venom Noda. So you have to get into these soaks during web blades, and then Venom Noda is going to go off. So the best thing to do here is to aggressively move the boss away, and then all melee moving to the other side of the boss here before web blades goes out and begins choosing targets, and then range also staying away from where we want to place the reactive toxins. Is just a really good dynamic to make sure that they are placed consistently and that people can move into them more easily. So essentially, like, the more web blades that are away from the reactive toxins in this kind of area, right, it's going to be much easier to move forward this way towards the reactive toxins than if all the web blades are just kind of like here and it's like a movie essentially. And after we do this reactive toxin, we're going to go into the intermission. We're dodging these waves, and then you could see there the reactive froth went off, and then immediately we're going into the first rest, and this is just going to pull players towards the boss. Very, very important that you show this mechanic respect. It's going to pull you farther than you think. You need to be about here to be safe, and it's very easy to get pulled into the boss, and if you ever do, you of course immediately die unless you have an immunity like bubble. We definitely want to be using personals on this rest. It very much does hurt as well. Right in there you can see exactly how far it does pull you. So the goal here, and of course worth mentioning that we have to dodge these waves coming out of the boss. So the idea is to play only 2 rests in this phase before breaking the shield. You can see this bar here, right? We're dodging waves, and then we're getting pulled for the second rest, and then we're trying to beat the third rest here. This second rest is a very good place, as I mentioned earlier, to use Time Spiral, because people have a lot of movement abilities that enable them to cancel this pull. Worth noting, this pull is cancelable with anything that would normally cancel a knockback. So if you're a DK with Death's Advance, if you're a Havoc Demon Hunter, you can press Glide to cancel it. Dragon can just press their version of Glide. Warrior can leap, and Blink, Mage can Blink. Anything that would like cancel a force movement effect would work on this. Bop, Blessing of Protection also works. If you want to be nice to your priest, that's always a good button to use for them. And we do beat that third rest and start the second part of this intermission. So at this point, 2 Void Speaker ads will spawn on opposite ends of the platform. They require kicks, and at this point you're splitting up your raid evenly into 2 groups, right? And like, so essentially a left-right convention, or more correctly, whatever marker you choose to use, whether it be circle and square, or whatever you decided to do. You can see the lowest platform off the edge of the main platform is where this ad is going to spawn, because when it dies, it is going to knock players who are between it and that platform up onto it. So we're splitting our tanks, healers, and DPS up into 2 groups. They are going to each ad, they're killing it, they're kicking it, and they're dodging orbs that spawn on ranged players. So range should be around the ad in this kind of formation, baiting these orb explosion spawns. They spawn in a little circle, and then after a short duration, orbs explode out of them, shooting away, and these are deceptively easy to get hit by, especially just because these ads are so big. If you're a melee playing on the opposite side of like an orb exploding, it's always something you want to be vigilant of. Top down helps a lot with this, and then just general, if you're a raid leader, making that call like watch orbs every like at the beginning of the phase, and then every 10 seconds or so can always be helpful. Otherwise you're just kicking it and killing it. And here's a good example of the orb spawning in and exploding, and then obviously very nice if the ranged are baiting it away from melee and making life easier for them as well. Alright, so whenever the ad dies, any orbs that would have spawned will despawn and not go off, and then at the end of this cast, they will knock players back up onto the appropriate platform. And on these platforms, we have to deal with rests from the intermission, where she attempts to pull one platform at a time off towards her. So she'll also oscillate between platforms. There are 2 pylons on the edge, the platform in the direction that the bridge will appear. When you click both, she will cancel any rest cast currently in progress and allow you to move on. And the way the pylons are triggered are by defeating the ads present on the platform. So on this platform, we have 2 types of ads, 1 Guardian, 1 Expeller. The Guardian is a tanked ad, and the Expeller simply casts Beam mechanic, which should be dodged. It's important to note that The Guardian casts a knockback ability called Oust on the tank. Easy as a tank to get knocked off, so that's something you want to be aware of. There are 2 like movement effects that are being applied to you, with the Guardian knocking you back and then rests, attempting to pull you off the platform. So definitely important to be vigilant. And here we can see rest being cast on this platform. Important that you show this mechanic respect. And then you saw there the Expeller beam right here. Easy, very easy to get pulled into the beam here. You can see with the timing. There's also these swirlies that appear on the ground. You can see here. If you are a player who can cancel the rest, it is important that you do not bait in this area, because players who move back to the rest, back to play the rest correctly, right, and get pulled kind of like using the whole platform space because they don't have an ability, for example, like a priest. You're baiting these swirlies here in this line. Very easy for players to get pulled by the rest into these swirlies and just explode. Similarly with the beam, you generally want the beam to be pointed kind of vertically across the platform instead of like diagonally or horizontally, just so it's easy for players that are getting pulled by rest to avoid. Right, and here also is a good example of the pylons, right? You can see they're kind of protected because both of these ads are alive by this void shroud. And we'll see once those ads die, those shrouds go away and they will become clickable. And then this bridge will appear. These small ads will appear on the bridge, and very important that DPS players allow their tank to get and maintain aggro. There's no reason to be damaging them early or prioritizing them at all. Simply allow your tank to get aggro and don't really pay attention to them until they're all stacked up and you're confident that your tank has had some time to hit them. You begin this platform here with that beam into this rest. And then again, important at all times, you're aware of when rest is going to be pulling you, and that you're positioned for it correctly. On this platform, you have this shielded ad, which is at 1 HP. You simply have to break the shield before this Cosmic Apocalypse cast finishes. Here you can see we have 15 seconds until it goes off. This cast begins after you break her Intermission shield, so there's a static amount of time until that shield break for you to get here and kill this ad, right? So if you're thinking about how the fight works from a construction perspective, that's kind of a speed requirement. You have to have killed this ad. You have a discrete amount of time from breaking the shield in the Intermission until you must kill this ad. On the second platform as well, we'll be dealing with a mechanic called Gloom, which targets healers with a magic dispel. When the effect expires or is removed by way of dispel, it deals heavy raid damage on each side. So what you want to do to deal with this mechanic is dispel one instantly, and then tell people to personal or use a raid defensive CD, and then allow the second debuff to expire. So if we can rewind this here, we can watch on our raid frames, we have Dryny and Vispo. It is worth noting that Gloom is always applied to a healer on this difficulty. We can see 2 appear, one on Dryny and one on Vispo. If we immediately dispel Vispo here, we have time to heal it before the rest. If we had allowed the second debuff to timeout, then occurred at a pretty reasonable time. Alternatively, you can allow the rest to happen and then desync them. You're having a rest go off, then you're healing everyone back up. You're having one Gloom go off, and then you're healing everyone back up, and then you're having the second Gloom expire, right? And that's also a pretty decent way to handle the mechanic. But by far the most important thing is that people use a defensive, right? You can see here we have pressed rally, and then you should definitely personal this moment as well. Definitely the only real scary part in the Intermission in terms of like having people die to damage. So I definitely emphasize sending personals here if you're the raid leader, and if you're a healing officer, or assigning defensive cooldowns for like rally and Devo and abilities like that. Here's probably the best place to use it in phase 2 if they are up. So those pylons were clickable. This rest targeted us, and then we're going to click the pylons, and the rest is cancelled. Again, skitters, be respectful of aggro, 5 sunders and all that. And then on the last platform here, the Void Speaker, which is the type of ad that we fought immediately after breaking the shield in the Intermission. We split up into our 2 sides. This ad, this is the same type of ad. We simply just need to kick it, and then recall that orbs will be spawning on ranged players again, and we need to dodge them. Very important here that ranged players are not playing with melee. It makes it incredibly difficult to dodge. And you can see here, even in this video, often the melee are having to be very cognizant of the orbs. Here, we're getting knocked up onto the platform for P3. Important, when this ad dies, we're aware of the positioning. As a tank, it needs to be in this line, right? Ideally somewhat centered. These poles on the platform, like holding the platform up, will stop you from being knocked up onto the platform. if you press an ability like glide or hover, it will cancel this knockback and you will not be knocked up. And then this knockback itself does have, I think, about a 45-yard range. So if you kill the ad like farther back on this platform, it's possible to miss the knockback entirely and not be knocked up onto the platform at all, or not maintain enough distance from that knockback to make it to the platform. And you can see it opens up and allows you to land on the platform. And at this point, all players are going to be coming together, and you have some free time to DPS the boss while she casts this beginning of phase 3 cast called Aphotic Communion. Now in this phase, our tank mechanics have changed to Gorge and Infest. Infest occurs first, and one tank takes the Infest while the other tank takes Gorge. Gorge is a channeled cast and deals raid damage based on the amount of damage the tank takes during this channel. Gorge applies a vulnerability, so the tank taking Infest wants to immediately taunt off the tank taking Gorge as soon as the channel completes. And then the dynamic that we want here is she's going to leap here, and melee are going to stack behind the boss, as of course. And then ranged are going to stack over here. And the reason for this is because when Infest goes off, swirlies are going to target ranged players. So we can bait as ranged these swirlies on the edge of the room, right? And maximize the play space around the middle of the room for later when we want to deal with Acolyte Essences and place portals and other mechanics. And you can see us maintaining this convention. Alright, you can see since this is an early heroic kill of ours, the tank goes here with Infest. This is not what I would recommend. I would recommend that, similar to our Mythic strat, if you've watched that at all, is that you do stack here and bait these swirlies out. But the reason for moving this Infest, I want you to move it over here. So put the Infest here and have the circle be something like this, is that the ads, when they die, drop area denial, like the exact same type as these swirlies, right? And it's very free to just have the boss over here and then put the Infest here. And then the tank can easily just go back, taunt the boss, and move it away if necessary, but you should be using abilities like Ring of Peace, Ursul's Vortex, Pressing Roar, Stun, that combo of abilities to keep these ads grouped away from not allowing them to go into the boss, and just have all the melee come off the boss and blow them up. They're done, their puddles are here, and we no longer have to worry about them anymore. And we've created this nice bit of area denial right on the edge of the room in a place where we don't really want to go again. That's definitely the convention that I would use. Right, and you can see there kind of like the leeway with hatchlings going to the boss, but not something you want to mess with. Just put down the ring, blow them up, Ursul's, spit, and stun. And we can see here players getting Royal Condemnation, 2 of them on heroic, so we just want them to go in front of the boss. You can minimize the raid damage by maintaining a large amount of fall off. And then once those go down, they'll spawn that ad that begins to chain players. And you just want to drag the boss on top of them and cleave them down. No need to focus them. Just keep hitting the boss, cleave them down. As long as the boss is dragged over them, they will die very quickly. And then we get this portal mechanic. This convention is very good because the ads in this phase spawn according to the boss positioning on these vertices of the hexagon in the middle of the room, right? So if the boss was here, they would spawn here, 1, 2, 3. And with this portal positioning, there's still free space where melee can hit this ad here. If you're thinking about the portal positioning, in the middle of this area is going to be the best. And then this portal can be farther away. The reality is that you'll want it a bit farther away, like down here, ideally, because players, after going through the portal, need to spread out with a circle around them and make sure they don't overlap that. So to make that as easy as possible. When the portals spawn in, they will shoot out these orbs, which should be dodged, and then the ring, Frothing Gluttony, she'll suck all players gently, pulling them into her, and then this ring will close in on people, and you just need to walk into the portal. Anyone with a blink can obviously avoid that, or blink heroically. Demon Heart could double jump, dash over it, etc. But on heroic, not too important. Simply just going through the portal is just fine and safe. As long as you spread out afterwards, you can see that's exactly what we do. And then following that, we get the web blades mechanic. This pre-spread nature, right? So like you're already kind of pre-spread for the web blades to go down. That should make these fairly easy to dodge. And then nothing else is really happening. And then we kind of repeat the original sequencing, right? Another infest, range should be baiting here. We spawn the infest hatchlings, right? Putting down 2 more royal condemnations, right? So that's kind of like a sequencing, tighter sequencing of abilities than the first set. So that infest is going off, the ranged are baiting the puddles, the 2 shackle targets are being chosen, they're going in front of the boss away from the group, and the melee are going back to the hatchlings, AoEing them down, and then the boss is being dragged on top of the 2 shackles, and they're being cleaved down as well. And then we can see the timer coming up for Queen Summons, and this is where we want the boss to be in a good position, so our 3 ads spawn in a way that they're able to be hit. You can see here, we do have that little bit of space here, which isn't covered by puddles, right? If we had done the spiderlings in front of the ranged players here, obviously it wouldn't have any area denial, so that's something to keep in mind. Then your acolytes are coming up, and you're dodging these web blades. Important thing to note with the acolytes is they spawn in with a shield. Until the shield is broken, their cast that does raid damage cannot be kicked, and we can see it becomes kickable. Important to emphasize, this is just no assignment is really necessary here. You could of course assign left, right, middle kicks just to maintain an easy convention. You could double assign kicks to each ad cast and make sure that you never miss, but in any case it doesn't do a massive amount of damage, so it shouldn't be anything to really worry about. You can see when the ad dies, let's see if we can get a good POV of it here. It spawns in an essence, yes, perfect. Okay, so this ad died, and you can see here this essence is spawning in, and we had placed 2 portals behind us. So the kind of sequencing here is we spawn in the ads, web blades, and then she casts Queen Summons, the ads spawn in, the web blades disappear, we kill all the ads. As the ads die, we're spawning in these 3 essences, right? So 1 ad was here, 2 and 3. There's an essence that spawns exactly in front of the ad, right, when it dies, right? And we simply need to have 3 players assigned, and we can recall the weakauras that we talked about in the beginning for assigning these. You can assign those names, they'll get a pop-up, and it'll tell them exactly what to do. And that's probably the most consistent way to do it. Outside of that, you can always assign, like looking at the center of the room, left, middle, right. Now what these players need to do is they need to pick up their essence, and they need to go through the portal, because the boss is beginning to cast ring. Important that you dodge these orbs as you make your way back to the portal, and that all these essences are picked up. If an essence is left on the ground, and the ring hits it, then it will blow you up and you will wipe. So this is only if the essence is on the ground. If you are a player who is holding essence and you get hit by the ring, nothing will occur, and that player will probably shortly die after by getting hit by the ring, but your raid will live, and that's something to keep in mind. You can see here she's beginning to cast the ring, and then all players are going to go in, and then on heroic the essences simply just go away after you go through the portal. And then we get web blades. So there's a spread for the circles and then into web blades, and then we simply repeat similar mechanics as before. You can see on our timers here, right? Infest, so range baiting, killing small ads, gorge, web blades, and then another set of Queen Summons. And then the fight does go on longer, but at this point in the tier, you should have more than enough damage to be killing it around this time, at least, or perhaps potentially even earlier. That is, I believe, all I have for today. Best of luck, and pay attention as mythic guides will be coming out soon. Sikran, Rashanan, Brood Twister Ovanax, Princess, coming up in the next week or so. Make sure you tune into those. Have a great day, and we'll catch you in the next one.